Hey, John, how are you this week?
Good, Elliot. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. I saw this week that the European Commission adopted a new tax framework essentially for business taxes, and it's a multi-year process. But there were some things in there that I think are germane to what you and I talk about almost every week. Did you happen to see that document?
Yeah, I did. And obviously, neither you or I are tax experts, but I thought what was interesting about it was the reference to something that is a global challenge, and that's shell companies, the misuse of those entities for a variety of reasons, including tax evasion or money laundering and that sort of thing. So, yeah, there's a lot in the document. It's 15 pages long. So those that are enmeshed in the tax world, take a look at that. But what I thought was relevant to talk about this week is they also added that there'll be a new initiative, a legislative initiative to deal with misuse. And they talk about misuse of shell entities. They talk about a number of things, like I said, including tax evasion or money laundering. While they do say there could be valid reasons for those entities, although you and I can debate that, right? There's a need for further action. And they think that that's going to help the economies of these countries, but also establish a level of fairness. And I think that's really the key here. They believe that a lot of entities utilize these vehicles so that they don't have to pay their fair share of taxes in all these different jurisdictions. So I thought, because FATF has talked a lot about misuse of shell companies, obviously we have in the States the new eventual beneficial ownership registry and some of the other things, that there's a consistent theme, obviously, throughout the globe. And this just shows the economic impact of trying to address it.
Yes, and they, in other parts of the document, they talk about the need for a more international approach to consistency in business taxation. We saw a similar theme in the Biden administration's announcement maybe 6 weeks ago about their efforts in terms of tax fairness in taxation and the concerns about tax avoidance by and the tax gap as both a revenue issue and a fairness issue, the people who pay their taxes versus the people who don't. And this is an important part of it, because with commerce being so globalized nowadays, coming up with a way that that organizations aren't able to move around the world to find the places where it's easier to evade taxes will make enforcement easier. And clearly, dealing with the beneficial owner issue is another element of that.
Yeah, and consistent with what the Biden administration talked about, and polling data in the States, frankly, that talk about the importance of a fair tax infrastructure. The statement in the EU document is that a first step for a fairer tax system, as you referenced, is greater public transparency on the taxes that are paid by large economic actors. So I think they're showing, the themes are pretty consistent, right, with the EU and with the states and other jurisdictions. I also note that in the Biden administration plan, they're going to add a number of IRS agents. And we obviously have a nice direct contact with the former IRS CI chief, Don Fort, and all those dedicated men and women that work in that space, and how important it's been over the past number of years, because there's been a decrease in agents, and that obviously impacts the infrastructure, the ability to investigate financial crime. So the fact that all this is happening at the same time, I think, has economic, but also a fairness impact, which can't be overstated.
No, I agree. I think one of the things that there's some studies to indicate that one of the things that does promote tax compliance is the belief that the system's fair. So it's important for the global system to be fair. And while this doesn't cover the whole globe, if you get the US and the EU, you're on the way to getting a significant part of the economic engine. Now, there's certainly many countries, and China would be the obvious one, as a huge economy that will need to get on board with things like this. But it's an interesting trend, and it's come up reasonably quickly, I would say. So.
Right, and the document is again on the EU Commission website, a communication on business taxation for the 21st century. So again, we would point to that for the information that people are looking for. And I also say, sort of as a final point, because of our relationship with Don being on our advisory board, we've also worked closely with his firm, Castellanos and Fink, who are clear experts in the tax space. So for more information, that's certainly a place you can go. And we'll continue here at AML RightSource to try to keep you abreast of global and domestic issues that we believe touch the financial crime infrastructure. And this is clearly one.
Agreed. And as we've said the last number of weeks, if you're looking for this podcast or others, you can find us on Spotify or SoundCloud or wherever you find your podcasts. And there's, in addition to This Week in AML, we have a number of other series that are running. So we hope you'll take a look at some of our other content. And John, I will be back with you next week. You have a great holiday weekend.
You too. Take care of yourself. Stay safe.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.